Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of Upwards. Today, I have a very special guest all the way from the other side of the planet. Joining me today is Jane Frankland. Welcome, Jane. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Phil. It's so good to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, what time is it over there? It's early morning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just gone 8:30.
As we record this, it's about 7:30 in New Zealand, so we're truly globally here. I wanted to introduce Jane because she's doing some amazing things, and there's quite a sort of a list of things that I could say. But principally, Jane is an award-winning cybersecurity leader, influencer, board advisor, author, speaker, awards judge, recognized by Wiki, UNESCO, and LinkedIn Top Voices. As well. So there's lots that's going on there. Jane has written some amazing books. She runs a business around consulting, and particularly around diversity and leadership, and is doing some incredible work. And I think we're really beneficial to hear what she has to say today. So Jane, I'm really looking forward to digging into that a little bit further with you, and really understanding your story and what you're all about in terms of the work that you do now and its different sort of platforms. So thanks again for coming on the show. And if you don't know me, my name is Phil. I'm founder and CEO of Omidly. We're a cybersecurity company. And so this is a podcast that we talk about leadership, security, and privacy, and also technology and startups as well, and the sort of intersection of those sort of three things and the interesting challenges and opportunities that creates for us in this world. So Jane, tell me a little bit about you, perhaps to start with. Your background. You've got an incredible story. And reading your LinkedIn profile is like a sort of masterclass in how to do this. But I'd love it if you just would start to share a little bit about you and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Well, I've been in the industry for like over 2 decades, and I originally came into the industry from having no tech qualifications at all. So my background is art and design, and after graduating, I fell pregnant with my first son. I've got 3 kids, and even though I was successful as a designer, so I had an agent, I was selling work all over the world, in galleries as well, like Christie's, and I wasn't making enough money to support my family. I was a single parent, and so someone said, "Look, you've got a good brain. Go and get yourself a proper job." And so I retrained, didn't know what I was going to do, and ended up entering sales. And sales was something that I never thought I wanted to do because I'm an introvert. So I'm actually quite shy and very much an introvert by nature, which is interesting considering all the stuff that I do. So I kind of entered sales, met a new boyfriend. He was in technology. And after about a year of doing well in that job, and I was ready for a new challenge. So he said, "Look, how about we go start a company?" And that's kind of how it all started. So literally, I went straight into tech by building my own company in my 20s,
Wow.
not knowing anything about security. I mean, security was new, and that's where I was, back in the day. It was looking at technology and really thinking, well, what's interesting? And the only 2 things that really interested me at that time were AI or security, and AI was too new, but security was feasible. So I just got on and with my business partner, and we were really focused. I knew exactly what we wanted in terms of like how fast we wanted to build the company, how much we wanted to sell it for, what type of company it was going to be, where our key kind of strengths were, and we just got on with it. And we kind of had we had ups and downs. We almost lost the company at one point during the dot-com boom bubble, when that burst, and learnt the important lesson of cash is king. It doesn't matter what your sales pipeline is like, cash is king. So yeah, I managed to turn it around and just built this amazing company. And then since then, I've kind of like accidentally, and I say accidentally because it's true, man plans and God laughs is something that I'm forever saying, but I've accidentally kind of ended up becoming this champion for women, this voice for the voiceless, this activist / change agent, and yeah, really kind of focusing in on women and how we can get more women into cybersecurity and other male-dominated industries. So yeah, I mean, I do a lot. You read it all out at the beginning, and I'm there like sitting there kind of going, oh my God, it sounds crazy. And I think that is very much, me. It's like madness, craziness, hugely ambitious, really serving from the heart, serving my market and serving myself as well, which is something that I've kind of more recently discovered. I figure into this whole equation, it is really important that I do my best work, I play to my strengths, and I design the life that I want to live, so yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's such an unusual path. I mean, I don't know many designers that go into cybersecurity, although I could possibly be one of them myself. But that is an amazing pathway, and you're still here, still doing it, and
Yes.
so there must be some things that you've really learned along the way that you've done right, because it is a hard path sometimes, and running businesses and all those sorts of things. So you've definitely, you've done it long enough that you've no doubt figured out some pretty important things about yourself and about leadership as well. We can talk about that real soon. So let's talk a little bit about how the diversity efforts that you're putting into women in cybersecurity and even in tech in general has long been a huge imbalance, and no doubt other industries as well. What have you come to? What's your central thesis around this in terms of where does the problem really start, and how can we be part of fixing this?
Yeah. Well, there are lots of things going on, and it's certainly when we're looking at companies, it's individual for that company. So they might be doing some things right, but other things are just not working. And so I think there are three main areas. So there's that kind of attraction piece, that awareness piece. So are we doing a good job, say in security or tech, of really describing what it is that we do and what that looks like? And in security, it's so diverse now. There's so much opportunity, whether you're technically orientated or whether or not you're not, and you're more kind of like people focused. So we've got to do a good job of that. We need to get into the schools earlier and be consistent with that, and make sure that we are keeping in contact with the students, all the way through. And then we also need to look at the career pivoters. So those who are out, working a job, but maybe looking for a challenge, or are dissatisfied, and just want a new turn, because there are plenty of people out there. And so that's like a big area. And I really think we're doing a much better job of that than ever we've done before. And the second area is the hiring bit, and this is where we fall down. So we're doing a great job of evangelizing and raising the awareness and saying this is really cool, like it's forward thinking, it's dynamic, you can be well paid, come join us, we want you. And then with the hiring aspect, it's almost like the doors are closed. So we're saying we're open, but the doors are closed. There's a lot of bias that goes on there. There are a lot of dysfunctional processes. I write extensively, and one of my recent blogs actually talks about a process that really was not benefiting all people. So women were looking at it in one way, and it didn't help them to be hired because of how they were behaving. So that needs to go on, and then really it's that development piece. The third area really is, okay, well, if they get through and we manage to hire women, we need to set them up for success. So it's not about ticking a diversity box, or adhering to or meeting a target or a quota. It's really kind of making sure that they're set up for success, and they're developed, and you are retaining them and your other people for as long as possible, which isn't happening. I mean, in security, we have a problem of retention. I think certainly in the UK, there was a recent report that was done, and the average tenure for someone was less than 2 years. I think it was 1 year and 10 months. So, and that's not it's not acceptable that, and certainly it's not comparative when you're looking at other industries where I think the average tenure is about 4 years. So, we're really, we have a leaky pipeline. We're not doing a great job there. So there are there are things that we need to do to make sure that we are doing a better job for not just women, but for all people.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little bit like, it's sort of like our business needs to not only win customers, but then keep them. And
Exactly.
and it's only one half the equation,
Yeah.
to hire somebody, and to say, great, we've got sort of people on the pipeline and we've hired them, but then you actually have to develop and keep them, and it's that sort of whole story arc, as it were, with people.
The 80/20, I mean, it's just like the cost. When we're talking about leads and things like that and acquiring clients, then 80% of the cost goes into that business development generation. And it's kind of similar with this, so it's just like all of that cost to recruit and hire. And then, that they're not set up for success, and that they're leaving. And also the other thing, when it comes to women really are the canaries in the cage. So if you've got a problem, in your team, in your organization, the women will signal it first, and it's going to be a case of they'll be exiting, and then like, well, what's happening with your people? Because what's good for women is good for men too. It's
exactly. Indeed, and listen to those people. It's easy to, some people may ignore the sort of warning signs or ignore those little early signals, and I've definitely made that mistake myself in the past, but I've learnt that, every time you hear something little, it's worth kind of pulling that thread a little bit further and going, okay, what's going on there? Because that might be just the first part, your understanding of what's really going on. Tell me a little bit about, some of the mistakes maybe companies make in the hiring process, because if the hiring process, as we know, is designed and carried out by by men, then we're clearly going to be making some mistakes there. Can you tell us a little bit about some common mistakes or things we can do better during that hiring process, and even indeed the way that we design our jobs, so they're more inclusive and workable for different people?
Yeah, so it's really kind of starting off with like your job description. So really looking at, well, what exactly do you want? So less, to do more, you've got to do less. So keep those short and really look for the skills and the behaviors and the values that you want. So be really, really clear on that, and don't copy and paste to save time from a great big long job spec, wanting certifications and things like that, unless they are absolutely necessary. So really work hard to craft a good job description and make sure your language is gender neutral. That's much more preferable. You can use processes. So there's some really good tools out there that will help you, not just with that aspect of making sure that you're using gender neutral language, but the whole process, of actually going out there to attract and then interview, first stage interview. So you're asking work sample questions, so questions that really relate to the job. You're not necessarily looking at a CV or a resume. You're actually going through, these are the skills and these are this is the type of work that you will be required to do in this scenario. What would you do? So that really helps. And then when you are evaluating each candidate, each prospective employee against each question that's answered, then you are reducing the bias that kind of comes from interviewing someone. So you can do all of that online. You don't have to be sitting in front of them. You don't have to have a panel. Panels aren't great because candidates can pick up clues from the those asking the questions. So you first kind of like process is by having the work sample questions, and then drilling down on who is coming through to have another interview. So it could be a final interview stage. You don't have to have, when you want to increase the number of women on the team, you don't have to have a female interviewer. You just have to have someone who believes in the mission, and perhaps has gone through some training, some competent training on how to interview, and so that they're aware of biases and things like that. So a lot of companies will think, oh, we have to have a woman there interviewing, but you don't. So those are kind of like common mistakes that are made, and ways to kind of like rectify those. There are other kind of situations that I've seen, like horror stories, whereby some women are tested, they're given a harder test just to check that they can actually do the job. There was a situation that I came across the other week whereby people were answering a test remotely, and the instructions that were given weren't particularly clear. So the women kind of abided by rules that they thought existed, whereas the guys didn't. They just kind of got on. They used their initiative. If they didn't know the answer to a question, then they Googled it or whatever. There weren't any rules to say you couldn't do that. So they just applied themselves and did that, whereas the women didn't. They thought, for whatever reason, that they couldn't do that. If they didn't know the answer to the question, then they were a failure, or that was something that was lacking in them, their knowledge, a knowledge gap that was lacking. So they thought that they would be cheating if they actually went to Google, pulled out the phone or something like that. Now, nobody realized until, the results came through, and they realized that actually not many women were coming through, and they also understood what was actually going on behind the scenes, so again, it's women tend to be more compliant. They tend to abide by the rules, much more than the men. It doesn't make anybody wrong. It's just something to watch out for if you're applying a test. Make sure that your rules are really, really clear, so that no one kind of gets left behind or, comes through. So, I think those are the main
Yeah.
look out
And
for.
things like job descriptions, I've heard it said, that as a big generalization, men will often sort of try and punch above their weight in terms of apply for a lot of jobs that they're clearly not qualified for, or they'll really push the boundaries in terms of what they do, and often just ignore requirements, in a job description. Whereas sometimes it can be kind of different for a woman, I don't have exactly 7 years experience, maybe I have 6, and so I can't apply for that role. So whereas someone else might just go, oh yeah, sure, I'll just give it a shot.
I'm going to take a punt.
So being I guess more accurate in terms of, and sometimes employers, and I've certainly been in this position myself, where it's like, oh, I would happily talk to somebody who's less qualified, but that wasn't explicit, and so maybe people who are just naturally filtered out of that process who could have actually been in the pipeline, but
I remember going for an interview recently, and occasionally I've worked, had a portfolio career, so worked as an executive for companies like Accenture was the last one, as a managing director. But I remember another company approaching me about being a regional lead. And, I looked at the job description, and it was just like, I don't have that. I don't have that. So, I said to the interviewer, the lead, if you want someone technical as per the job description, that's not me. And he was just like, no, we don't. We just want someone who can lead. We want competent leaders. That is the main. So, for him, it was a great conversation that we had, but his takeaway was like, right, I need to kind of go back to talent and acquisition, HR, and make sure that these job descriptions are tidied up, because actually we've just got something out that is not describing the type of person that we want to come on board. So it's really taking the time, because otherwise you're just like falling at the first hurdle.
Yeah, indeed. And I saw, one of the things I've done, which is really easy to do, which I think that can make a really big difference, is if you're writing a job description, particularly if you're a guy, is to pass it to a colleague or pass it to someone that that can read it and sort of just give their impression on it. They might change some words, they might question things a little bit, because it's really hard to sometimes see this in yourself, and so you need the support of other people. And I've done that, and it's made a huge difference, and it's really simple to do, right?
Absolutely.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Huge. Just a little bit about, tell me, just touch on sort of working arrangements, because we're no longer really necessarily 9 to 5 in the office, although some,
Yeah.
some industries and some businesses still insist on that. But like people who are raising families or picking up kids from school and doing all sorts of things require the flexibility, right? And
Yeah.
I think that just not having that flexibility or not advertising it in the first place can automatically exclude people who may not realize that that's even possible.
Absolutely. Well, more and more people are looking for that. It's not just a case of women. So, I looked at a piece of research the other day, and it was talking about women and pay, and women are still paid unfairly or like not in line with their peers in tech. And there's a myth out there that women want the flexibility, they want the benefits, and they're not so interested in the pay. And that is just a myth. Like with this bit of research, I can't remember which company did it, but it was like 55% of women kind of said, no, we want the money, so but it's not just women, it's all people. Like more and more people, particularly millennials, are kind of like looking for, and I do want to say that work-life balance, but it's like they're looking for a different experience, so they want so much more. And I'm excited by that because I think companies have a real opportunity to change, and they're driving that change. So since the pandemic, pandemic has changed everything, and we've got such an opportunity to really create these fantastic environments that work for more people. So it could be a single parent, at home. It could be someone with small children. It could be a carer, someone looking after their elderly parents. Often it is a case that that falls to women, but not always. And whatever the case, it's just like really ensuring that the work gets done. I mean, you and I are both business owners. I'm sure you're like me. I don't care, how you do this, just make it work. It's just like the quality, the standard, get the job done. You don't have to be in the office. You can be working from a beach, in Thailand, like living the dream. But there are certain deliverables and a standard that needs to be executed. So you do that. How you do it is, I'm fine with. So I think companies that aren't doing that are really, losing out. Employees are pushing back, and they're not being as prepared to tolerate, no matter the brand, that they're working for. I mean, the Great Resignation, we saw so many people leaving jobs, after COVID, because they just thought, what, it's just I'm not prepared to do this anymore. Like life is too short.
Right.
I'm capable, and I want to find a company who I can work with that enables me to do my best work, and I'm surrounded by people I get on with, and I'm actually having much more fun and fulfillment, by doing this, or I'm going out and creating my own company, because it's time, I can do it.
And the interesting thing about benefits and money is that yes, at a certain point, people, there's a certain point I think where it doesn't make as much difference. Whether who you are. Obviously money's great. We like money. We want to earn more. But I've seen people leave companies for an environment which offers better balance, better leadership. Just quite frankly, more intellectually stimulating. And actually, money's kind of like second or third on the list. Which I think as managers or as leaders, that's actually really important, because you won't be able to retain your staff even if you've got the best benefits in the world. And so if you're not developing people, you're not leading them well, I don't think they'll last long.
It's true, and I see it so much with leaders. It's just like, I want to be in security leaders. I want to be able to do my job, and here there's just so much bureaucracy, and it's not fun. It's sucking the life, out of this. My love, my passion, out of this job. I've seen so many leave, and they go and join startups. They usually go and do that. Some of them go and create their own companies and do like the whole virtual CISO thing. But many either go into consultancies where they don't have the pains that they've experienced, in the big corporations and the bureaucracy. or they go into these startups where they can actually really make an impact and they can actually do the job that they love, and they're just not weighed down by the bureaucracy that goes on, this report writing or change this word or whatever. It's like, no, this is not keeping us safe. This is just bureaucracy. So I see so much of that going on, and they will take, that's not related to gender at all. It's human beings. They will take a pay cut in order to do that, and then not tolerating as much in the environments, what with the stress, the burnout, the attacks that are coming at us. It's harsh, it's really dangerous right now. It's never been as bad as it is right now.
What are some things, if we're in a leadership position, which many of us will be, whether we own a company or whether we manage a team, whether whatever we do, or we're heavily influential in the company. What are some things we can do right now, particularly at this point in time in the world where things are, still not, things are fragile and there's lots going on in the world. What are some things we can do for our people now and some things we can really focus on as leaders?
Well, I think one of the first things that you can do as a leader is go and speak to your people. Like, if you're not speaking to them, get to know them. And this was something that I did. I went into a Fortune 500 company, and really this was an exercise I did just with women, but it doesn't have to be related to women. But I went straight in and heard from them, like, what's going on, where are your frustrations, where are your challenges, and picked up problems that no one was aware of. Now, because of that meant that an intervention could be put in place, and those women were kept. So it's just like probably about 10% of those women were at risk of leaving, and they were kept because that happened. So I think the first thing to do is really go in and speak to your people and find out what is going on. I mean, certainly as a leader, I would be looking at yourself. So are you competent to lead? Do you need to be re-examining your skills? Because let's face it, we all get into bad habits, and it could be a case of, oh yeah, I've forgotten about that. Yeah, I remember how to do that now. Or actually plugging a gap that you don't know, is there, so that you can pick up on some of these signals that are going on. So one of the, for me, I think a lot of training can be quite academic. It can be quite theory based, and it's like, oh my God, I've got to remember that, and and that and that and that. But one of the models or trainings that I like the most, and I'm a certified trainer in, is the liberating leadership model, and that talks about really leader developers. As a leader, you want to develop more leaders, and having this mindset, which is so important for leaders, this high challenge, high support mindset. And with a high challenge, high support mindset, you really are able, when you've got that process going, you're able to have a pipeline of talent, ready to come into your organization. You've got employees who are really clear on what they're doing. They love coming to work. They're telling everyone else in their network, their circle, to come and work for you. They're just spreading the word about how amazing you are. And they are stretched and they are challenged and supported in equal doses. So with the high challenge, high support model, I'll just run through it. At the kind of the worst end of it, if you imagine a circle with quarters, in one segment you have low challenge, low support, and this is where people come into your organization and they're not getting feedback, and they don't really know necessarily what they're doing. They could be doing good work, or they might not be doing good work, but they're not getting any feedback. They're not getting any direction. So as a result, they might turn up and their work is just very, very substandard or average. It's not good. It's full of job swaths. And then you have another segment where you have high support and low challenge. And in this kind of segment, these people are really supported well. They're supported emotionally, they're supported financially, but they're not challenged. So they become very reliant on you as a leader. So they look for direction. They're they're not self-directing, and they become very resistant to change as well. So very set in their ways, resistant to change. So as a result, you're not getting your best work from these people. And then you have, in another segment, you have low support and high challenge. And this is an environment that I see so often. You're thrown in at the deep end, it's sink or swim, it's high stress, it's burnout, loads of people leave. Some people cope really well in that environment, and they do great work, but many people don't. And if those people do well, then there's no kind of methodology, there's no set way of doing things. It becomes their way, and so it's not repeatable. So the area that you want is that high challenge, high support, where the instructions are clear, the boundaries are clear, people are doing their best work. I'm okay, you're okay, and there's a whole process for that. So getting clear on your vision, your mission, all of that stuff. Really understanding what makes you unique, your team unique, and then like mobilizing your troops after that. So mobilizing and developing and enabling, those are the next kind of steps from that. But it's a process.
I really like that sort of quadrant style model. It's really easy to understand, and I think we all have examples of people that we know or ourselves have been in maybe all four of those at any one time in our career. And I think there's sometimes a prevalent. I think the high challenge, low support model is often prevalent in startups because there can be, or maybe not just startups, but that's mostly my experience, where there's this sort of heroic belief that if you just throw people in the deep end, they'll achieve these heroic feats. And sometimes that includes asking people to do things they've literally never done before. And
absolutely.
It sort of can be a time and place for the right support, but if you're literally just asking people to do a job they have no experience in and have no support in, you're kind of setting people up for failure, and that's massively demoralizing for people. But if they have, I think what you're saying is if they have the right amount of support, then that failure turns into success, into achieving things, which is hugely motivating, and people will stick around for that, and can be sometimes the highlights of their career. Those amazing moments that you think about, 10 or 15 years later, you're like, this was a really intense time. We were working really hard. We achieved this thing,
So true.
and almost engineering those moments in a sort of healthy and supportive way for people can be hugely motivating.
Completely, all pulling in the right direction, all inspired by one another. And even when things go wrong, you're able to go in and what to do. It's just like, and other people can see you doing that as well. So those environments are really, really good with change. They are brilliant for change. And let's face it, the amount of change that is being thrown at us, right now is vast. So you want people who can adapt, who are self-directing, who are clear, who can repeat, but they've got the guidelines, they're safe. So it's the psychological safety that is created.
Psychological safety, yes. You can create an environment where it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to, to operate in a safe way. Then you enable people to achieve a lot more. I was going to say something that's skipped my brain for now, but I really like what are some other things that the mistakes that leaders are making these days. Like, what is maybe sort of top 3 things that the leaders are making that we can fix? Maybe these are kind of like the most common little things that we need, we might be doing without even realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, another one. So we've spoken about like speak to people and find out what's going on. Also, like, look at your team. Like, you need to speak to your managers or your directors. Is what's really going on, that feedback, is that really what's going on? And you'll find that when you speak to your people, because sometimes it's not. But the other thing is, I think, have a growth mindset. A lot of leaders, I think that they know things, and they don't. They're really closed and fixed. And I'll come across this so often, with leaders and speaking to them, and it will be, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that. And it's really clear that they don't, from their actions. So it's really kind of, I think, like taking a moment to stop yourself or to expand your thinking. Be more
Yes.
open-minded, have that growth mindset and challenge yourself to think maybe in a different way, and expand your circle, your network. Because if you've got people who are agreeing with you, or just saying yes, then you're going to be quite limited by that. So this is where the diversity can really like come into play. I
Yes.
mean, how many times have you come across someone who might be the polar opposite of you, and they've really kind of like, I don't know, aggravated you, pissed you off, whatever. I mean, I can think of like one guy who, in my past, he really used to annoy the living daylights out of me. He really did. He just irritate me because he was so kind of like feely. Everything's about the feel. And I'm like, no, I'm about the money. And I went completely the opposite. So I'm about the money. It's not about the feeling. Don't give a shit about that. Show me the money, show me the money. He was like, feeling. And anyway, but I recognized he was such a good person. He was such a nice person. Values, we were completely aligned. But he bugged the living daylights out of me. But he made me better because
Yeah.
even though I could recognize my reaction and my polarity and going to not an even worse version of myself, but that extreme version of myself, he really helped me. I was aware, and this is the important thing. You have to have that awareness, because he helped me to actually see things in a different way. And so
Yes.
it's great to have that diversity within your network or within your company, so that you can do better,
Yes.
and see things in a different way, see things through a different lens, and be more open-minded and challenge yourself, and get the goodness, the gold that comes from all of that.
It's amazing to have at least someone that you come away from a conversation really thinking, or really going, if their advisor, really going, oh man, I've got a lot to learn there, or a lot to do
Yeah.
there. Like they're uncomfortable,
Yes.
and sometimes you prefer not to have those conversations, but you end up much better for it, and you're ultimately thankful that they existed. And I think the other thing I would say is to kind of add to your point about growing and having a growth mindset itself as a leader. It's really, really, really helpful if you have someone that knows you quite well, kind of observing and giving you feedback, because it's really hard to do this yourself, and sometimes you can
Yes.
be in, not many people in the position to do
That's
that. Maybe you own a company, your staff are certainly not going to
Yeah.
do that very, unless you've got a super cordial kind of thing going on. But generally, someone else who's more sort of your peer, or that you don't have any sort of power dynamic over, that they can say, hey, look, and maybe ask you an empowering question and talk about your style of doing things.
Yeah.
And that can be massively helpful, because sometimes the feedback loops and the stuff is super long.
I definitely agree. And that could be a mentor, it could be a coach, it could be being part of a mastermind group, it could be a family member, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm if you want to do a better job, then you need to seek skilled people that can come into your company and work, with you. But you need someone as a leader to help you to become better. That's what coaches do, like football teams, tennis players, whatever your sport is. If you want to do a better job and go to the next level, and you have a coach, who helps you get there. So, and you can have lots of different coaches for different aspects, whatever it is. Or you could find one coach that actually can deal with all of those. But I like to use a combination of training, coaches, masterminds, because I think that peer support group, the community, because I think they work really, really well. And especially when you mix it up and it's quite diverse in terms of industry.
Yes, yes, and I would say, if you're going into management for the first time, you really, really need that. I think that's really, really important to have. And if you're putting someone in management in your company, they really need that too.
Yeah.
And I've seen, what happens when that's not present, and it can, it can be pretty, pretty messy sometimes. And so I would say, I think really, if companies in high growth situations, it's really, really important to make sure that people are well resourced and supported. to actually do this job, because it's quite difficult at times, especially if they're growing from sort of really technical roles into like people management. It's like quite a big transition.
Yes.
Some people just sort of a natural, but other folks it's a really big transition, and you often learn a lot about yourself, and so it's a huge growth kind of moment, which needs to be supported. Yeah, indeed. Hey, look, I can't believe how fast this has all gone. We're coming at 40 minutes, so I think we'll probably wind it up there. Perhaps we could do chapter 2 again in the future with Jane. But thank you again for your time, Jane. It's been really, really a pleasure listening to your experience and just your wisdom around all of this. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. Thank you.
No problem. Look, if you've got anyone that's got a question for Jane or for myself, please just pop a comment below wherever you're watching this. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to respond to that and help you out as well. So please don't be shy. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.